There has been a lot of controversy and debate about whether or not there is, in fact, a deep state within the US government. The debate splits fast. The left says it does not exist. The right says it does, and that view is described as having majority support. Those who insist there is a deep state are dismissed by left-wing media as conspiracy theorists. Those who deny it are called complicit by others. The question that follows is simple and serious. What if it is real? Who is involved? What does it entail? And is it a danger to the Republic? Supporters point back through American history to argue their case. They cite eras when rich, powerful, and politically connected industrialists influenced government. Names like Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, John Paul Getty, Henry Ford, and John D. Rockefeller appear as examples of the last great robber barons. When workers tried to organize, they say the response could be force. Pinkerton detectives were hired. Sheriffs and police were brought in. At Homestead, Pennsylvania, steel workers striking against Carnegie met violent suppression. In 1921, West Virginia's Governor Ephraim Morgan called in the National Guard during a labor dispute. In 1919, soldiers from Camp Pike machine-gunned black sharecroppers hiding in the woods near Elaine, Arkansas, after they refused abusive conditions. Again and again, when crises arose, government imposed control by force or by law. Political scientist George Friedman has been cited for arguing that a deep state has existed since 1871, when presidential power over federal employees was restricted. Those who argue it exists point to a long list of controversies. The assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. The Iran-Contra affair. J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO. Presidents Franklin D. Roosevelt, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Bill Clinton. The claim is that powerful forces protected some people and punished others. After Watergate, secrecy itself became a scandal. In December 1974, journalist Seymour Hersh published revelations on CIA operations. Those reports triggered 3 separate official inquiries into the activities of the CIA and the FBI. In recent decades, historian Alfred W. McCoy has argued that the growth of the intelligence community after September 11th built a 4th branch of government that is, in his words, increasingly autonomous from the executive. Professor Michael J. Glennon has described a double government and pointed to the failure to close Guantanamo Bay as evidence. The episode also argues that well-connected politicians, mostly Democrats but also some Republicans, have escaped consequences for serious offenses. It cites Fast and Furious and Benghazi. It centers Hillary Clinton, alleging that as Secretary of State, she used an unsecured server for sensitive data, defied a House subpoena by deleting data and wiping devices, turned over phones without SIM cards, and had BlackBerry devices destroyed. The claim is that others went to prison for defying Congress, while Eric Holder evaded punishment. Edward Snowden is quoted as alleging a deep state made up of civil servants. Under Attorney General Loretta Lynch, FBI Director James Comey publicly said no reasonable prosecutor would pursue the Clinton case because there was no intent to commit a crime. The episode contends that the law does not require intent, and that the decision was not Comey's to make. Then came Operation Crossfire Hurricane. According to this account, the FBI and intelligence officials used the Steele Dossier to file 4 FISA applications under false pretenses, renewed them repeatedly, and spied on the Trump campaign and then on the Trump presidency. The episode argues that Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, and Bill Priestap relied on lies and innuendo, that each false filing was a felony, and that there was no punishment when the truth came out. The origin story offered is that Senator John McCain pushed early research that was then passed to Democrats. The Clinton campaign and the DNC, through the law firm Perkins Coie, paid former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele millions to produce the dossier. Steele later testified he could not verify the contents. The episode says this undercuts sworn claims to the FISA court that the information was verified. A warning line from 2017 is often cited. Senator Chuck Schumer said the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. Commentators and the ACLU have been quoted as pointing to that statement as proof of institutional pressure. During his presidency, Donald Trump and his allies alleged that a deep state resisted his agenda, that the Justice Department refused to charge Huma Abedin or James Comey, and that leaks were used to shape policy and media narratives. The episode further claims that 52 former intelligence directors tied to the Obama era misled Congress and the public about the Hunter Biden laptop by signing a letter that labeled it Russian disinformation. It asserts that the government coordinated with social media companies to suppress information and silence dissent. In 2018, Newt Gingrich called Robert Mueller part of the deep state. The Mueller investigation spent tens of millions and found no wrongdoing by Trump, while exposing wrongdoing by some of his opponents. A later investigation by U.S. Attorney John Durham is cited as concluding that the Steele Dossier failed to justify launching Crossfire Hurricane, and that officials committed multiple perjuries. Also in 2018, Miles Taylor wrote an anonymous New York Times op-ed, saying senior officials inside the Trump administration were working to frustrate parts of the president's agenda. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and others pointed to that as evidence of internal resistance. The episode widens the lens to the military-industrial complex, staffed by retired flag officers, and notes Senator Rand Paul's claim that CIA briefings limited to the Gang of Eight are an example of deep state behavior. It then alleges that federal agencies spent years covering for what it calls the Biden family, that the IRS selectively targeted citizens while allowing a 7-year statute of limitations to expire on serious tax charges tied to foreign income, and that without that lapse, criminal exposure would have been severe. In 2020, former acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said the deep state claims were absolutely true. The episode argues that if Trump had won in 2020, direct evidence of weaponized agencies might never have surfaced. Instead, it claims the Biden administration used law enforcement and intelligence to attack political opponents, while local and state prosecutors, including Alvin Bragg in New York and Fani Willis in Georgia, pursued charges to influence elections. It contrasts that with Democrats who challenged past elections and were not charged. Finally, it accuses mainstream media of aligning with entrenched power. It cites 2 assassination attempts on Trump in 2024 and says the Secret Service and FBI have withheld documents from Congress, calling that either complicity or incompetence. The episode concludes that key agencies have lost credibility by playing games with the Constitution and creating fake news, and suggests that with a new president and administration in 2025, and with lessons learned, the deep state, as described here, may be on its way out. Whether one sees a hidden state or a series of hard-fought political battles, the unresolved question remains: who truly holds power in the United States, and how should history judge what comes next?